Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey is always top shelf. Whether you got your start as a Dynasty veteran, a Millbury survivor, or you were born into the Church of Trotz, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, here are your eclectic hosts, Sean Cuthbert and Christian Arnold.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Monday, May 2nd, 2022, coming at you live from the Hockey Night in New York studios on Long Island. The big season wrap show is upon us. The Islanders season is over. Andrew Gross of Newsday will be joining us. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me, as always, Christian Arnold. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Shawnee. How are you?
Glad to hear you're doing fine. I'm also all right. I'm also okay. Yeah, above average. So that's good. Yeah, man. The season's over. We got plenty to talk about. But before we do, want to remind everybody that we are happy to be presented by R.J. Daniels American Bar and Grill, located at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center. It is the best place to catch the Isles when you can't be at the game. Head on down for great food and drink specials, plenty of HD TVs, and in-game sound. Also happy to be sponsored by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course, UBS Arena at Belmont. They're an official partner of the New York Islanders. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com for all their great offerings. Also happy to be sponsored by Tide Technology, a voice-over IP company providing phone services for businesses across the country. If you're tired of dealing with long hold times and the impersonal service of companies like Spectrum, Optimum, and Verizon, give Tide Technology a call at 516-856-7800 for 3 free months of service. And, of course, sponsored by Oyster Bay Brewing Company, creator of the Barn Rocker Session Ale, available 12 locations at the Islanders' brand new home in UBS Arena, and even more distributors across the country from coast to coast. You can also visit the tap room at 36 Audrey Avenue in Oyster Bay 7 days a week to sample all their fantastic beverages. And, of course, folks, get your questions in for Questions Brewing later on in the show. So, Christian, the Islanders season has finally come to a merciful close. It was a roller coaster that ultimately ended in disappointment and a lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda. We're going to talk about it all night tonight until tomorrow. No, we're not. But we're going to talk about it a lot tonight. We've talked about a lot of that stuff already, but we're going to sum it all up, put a nice little bow on all of it. What do you say, CA?
Well. There was a lot that went wrong this season for the Islanders.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to be, I think we've talked about this a lot, and that is how important this offseason is going to be to reshaping this and getting this team back into the shape that it should be. And we've seen glimpses of what this team could have been. And I think maybe that's the most frustrating part for Islander fans when you look back at this season, because when you look at the coulda, woulda, shouldas, and you look at the last month or so, you look at the Islanders and how they played. They didn't play bad. They played pretty well, actually, all things considered. Now, understandably, I'm sure part of that is, of course, the fact that they were out of it and there really was nothing else on the line for them, so there was a lot more freedom to play in their game. And, of course, there was that sense of pride of playing for the jersey, the logo on the front and all the cliches that players that aren't going to the playoffs love to throw around. I think you saw a little bit more of what this team could have been in the last month or so. And I think that is both a frustrating aspect for fans, and I think that's both a hopeful sign for fans. Because on the flip side, it's frustrating because if you'd gotten this for 82 games this season, if you got this through, a lot of the ups and downs this season that the Islanders had, they would have been in a much better position. Or even if they got a couple more wins, maybe we were sitting there talking the last week of the season or so with those games actually meaning something.
Right.
The hopefulness, though, is that maybe only there's a small retool, or maybe there's only a small couple additions that you need to make, knowing that some of these guys really can step up to the plate and compete when it really means a lot. So there's the hope and there's the frustration, and I think you kind of saw both there in the last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, not only the fans, but they themselves needed to kind of prove that they could win some games, even as currently constructed, that they could be a little more competitive than they were. We know how frustrating this season was, and And it probably gave the coaching staff and management a little bit of a better idea of what they had in this team. And you can always go back and forth about, well, we don't know how the games would have went if they meant something, if they were there. But if they did mean something, that means that they would have been playing better all season long. So it is good to see that they, improved a little bit over this last month or so. And just to wrap this final week of actually games played, they sandwiched a convincing home sweep over the Caps between home losses to the Canes and the Bolts. Pretty exemplary of the season, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, how many weeks have we discussed where it was literally 500? 2 wins, 2 losses. Looked good against these guys, looked paltry against those guys. And that's kind of how it's gone, with a couple of losing streaks and a couple of winning streaks that ultimately resulted in what? They finished, 2 games over 500, I think it was, 37-35, and the rest overtime and shootout losses, whatever that total number was. So, right around mediocrity. I mean, right at mediocrity. And I mean, that's really what this season was. They lost a lot more than they won in the beginning, and they won more than they lost towards the end. But all in all, a very middle of the road, very middle of the pack season. We've talked ad nauseum about all the mishaps and the early misfortune that befell them in the beginning of the season. So we don't have to regurgitate all that stuff. But this team was also exposed to be a team with clear flaws, and I think that's something that we should maybe focus on tonight, as opposed to all the would-be excuses that we've gone on over and over again throughout the course of this season. And we've touched on some of this stuff. I mean, starting with speed, which is also kind of related to age. It is an older team, one of the oldest teams in the league by average. Now that's okay if you're able to play with the right amount of pace, but this team proved that hasn't been the case. And we pointed at guys like Zdeno Chara and Andy Green. We'll talk a little bit more about those guys in depth later. And then you can go, into the forwards too. And you wonder about guys like Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin and guys that are, getting into if they're not at their mid-30s already, they're close, in the Josh Baileys. And, Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, they're in their 30s, but obviously they had great years as far as goal scoring goes. I mean, they're not in that danger zone yet, but they're not far from it. But you also wonder, how much, these that 3 in the beginning of their age has affected foot speed out there. And I think that's one thing that's kind of shown with this team, is that they haven't been able to hang with some of the faster, younger teams in this league. So I think it's imperative that they get a little younger there, Christian, like yourself.
Well, I don't even know how to respond to that part. But it is, I mean, the interesting thing is about all some of the names you mentioned. I mean, I think some of the bigger curiosity to me anyway is what kind of role does a Cal Clutterbuck have on this team next season? What do those bottom 6 guys have, and sort of what are the expectations on them? Because the Islanders, as limited as the contracts are, they've reinvested, a lump sum of money to Cal Clutterbuck to keep him here, and to some other, kind of bottom 6 guys to keep them here. And I think for me, at least right now, one of the bigger questions, because I think that at the end of the day, the offensive issues are going to be what they are. I don't necessarily know if the Islanders are going to go out and be able to get we've talked ad nauseum about them needing to get a top 6 forward and goal scorer. I don't necessarily know if that's a possibility during the offseason, considering the cap constraints that they still find themselves under. That you have to line that up. You have to line up who's available on free agency. But to me, one of the bigger questions is going to be, what is the Islanders' role, or what do they envision that bottom 6 to be going forward? Is it just trying to regurgitate what made them successful 2-3 years ago, and hoping that a Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin and some of those guys can hold together for an 82 game season, which they can't?
I don't think they're going to be as relied upon as they were in seasons past. And this has come up between the two of us, I feel like maybe 3 or 4 shows ago, whatever it was. But I think that management and coaching still finds value in those guys being around. And maybe you can kind of start comparing it more to having guys like Leo Komarov around when he was, just because all that value they put on voices in the locker room. Yeah, first line, exactly. But again, character guys, the intangibles and whatnot. And now maybe I'm being a little more hopeful compared to expectation.
Right.
But I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt here. But I feel like those guys aren't going to get the same amount of minutes that maybe they did in years previous, where you see more traditionally the top 9 being used more in comparison to that bottom that bottom line, that fourth line, like a lot more teams tend to do. Maybe they're not going to get as many minutes as they have in years past, but I think that they're still going to get used. I think that they still serve a purpose on this team. I think that, that spark and that energy that they can bring is still valuable, especially Cizikas. I mean, it's kind of unfair to lump him in with those guys.
Yeah.
Because he still has...
Notice I didn't say his name.
Right,
You can't, because Casey Cizikas is not, when we've said this before, he's a third line center on most teams. And it's kind of, the situation is very unique and the circumstances are very different here on the island with the Islanders and their fourth line compared to other teams. So it is sort of a curious, a point of curiosity for me going into the offseason to see what the Islanders do. And if that's the case, then, what is the bottom six makeup? Who are they going after as far as, or who kind of takes the reins in minutes there?
I think the top, well, you say bottom six, and I think that the top half of that bottom six, the third line, is still going to get a significant amount of time. I still think J.G. Pageau and whoever's flanking him, I mean, you can put some placeholders there now just because we don't know what kind of shuffling they're going to do yet this summer, but you figure Parise's probably in there somewhere. Palmieri might be.
Right.
Bellows might be. Wallstrom might be. It really depends on...
a lot of might be's there.
What's that?
That's a lot of might be.
No, and Josh Bailey could be there. Anthony Beauvillier could be. The truth is, like, until we really see where the chips fall, like, if they bring anything in from the outside, what they bring in from the outside, that's really going to determine who's going to be flanking J.G. Pageau, because that's all going to trickle down from the top. Because the truth is, and we've seen it on the ice this year, all of those guys have been used throughout the lineup.
Yeah.
Whether it's next to Barzal, Pageau, or Nelson at various points of the season. So it's really going to depend on what Lou lands on by the time we get to September, October. And I hope that there's going to be some names that we're not used to that are going to be on that training camp roster by the time we get there. But you figure J.G. Pageau's there. It's just a matter of who's next to him. But I think whoever is there, that's going to be a very good, solid third line. See, it's funny because... we know what they need, but there's still plenty within that forward squad that makes up a deep forward lineup. It's just kind of adding that one or two piece, and really just in my mind one, and as far as the forwards go, that could really just, trickle down to the rest of the forward squad, and everything's fine. You could look at the second, third line, fourth line, and be like, okay, that all makes sense. That's all fine. But until we find out, who those guys are, it's tough to pen anybody in there. But with the general idea, that I think the third line's fine, and they're going to get plenty of ice time. They're gonna shut down other teams' first lines. They're going to go up against the Crosby lines and the Patrick Kane lines and whomever else, right? I think that's still going to be J.G. Pageau's job, whoever's with him. It's just a matter of finding out. But I think that maybe Barry will be a little more selective when he wants to get that energy spark, if you will, from the Cizikas line. But you're still going to see Martin thrown out there. You're still going to see Clutterbuck thrown out there. And maybe Johnston gets more of the odd game next season, spelling Martin for a game or two.
Right.
Maybe not so much Clutterbuck, but probably Martin, because, Martin's probably the most noticeably slowed down individual out of those guys. So maybe you see a little more of a shared job between those guys, but I think maybe just overall you see that line's time reduced compared to the rest of the forwards.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out, and obviously, looking at the rest of the lineup, and there's certainly going to be conversations about where Wallstrom falls into that, and then even Matthew Barzal, where he falls into all of this as well. Brock Nelson, who we talked about last week and the week before, he's really surpassed everyone as sort of your first-line center, and I think for good reason. And that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out there. But the point of it all is you kind of saw bits and pieces of that at the end of the season this year. You saw kind of the continued growth of Brock Nelson's game and a lot of different aspects that have played out. So it'll be interesting to see how this all works itself out in the offseason.
No doubt about it. And we're going to continue this discussion with Andrew Gross of Newsday. I want to thank you all for tuning in live at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. And, of course, later on at your favorite podcast providers. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Andrew Gross will join us.
Nikki, where should I go to watch the Islander game?
Dad, where should Fran go to watch the Islander game?
Just tell her to go to RJ Daniels.
Love the Isles? Go to RJ Daniels and enjoy your favorite hockey team with their big screen TVs and in-game sound. RJ Daniels also provides indoor and outdoor dining, catering, a vibrant late-night bar scene, and weekly live entertainment. Need great planials? Go to RJ Daniels. Call or visit online at rjdaniels.com.
From the Coliseum to UBS Arena, we're still rocking the barn.
We made a product based on something that we're big fans of.
You're going to rock the barn, you're going to have a barn rocker.
Oyster Bay Brewing Company's Barn Rocker, available at UBS Arena and everywhere beer is sold.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, hate those lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Hope you enjoyed the ads. Now let's get back to Hockey Night in New York with Sean Cuthbert and Christian Arnold.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching and or listening to Hockey Night in New York, presented by RJ Daniels. But right now, it is time for On the Line, brought to you by Tide Technology. And joining us on the line, good friend of the show from Newsday, the great Andrew Gross. Andrew, thanks again for hopping on with us. How you been, bud?
Christian, Sean, it is great. I'm actually, I know on FAN you're not supposed to do this because you get all the feedback, right?
Right.
But I am told that you can watch your fine show on twitch.tv/Hockey Night NY.
That is.
So I am going to that, and I'm going to try and see what the hell we're talking about here.
All right, sounds great.
There we are. This is great.
There you go. There you go.
Wow.
Watching while he's talking.
Andrew, I'm pretty sure one of his daughters is probably there figuring all of this out for him.
No, both still in school. This is my own little science project here.
Wow, this is impressive, Andrew. I'm very proud of you here.
Yeah. I see you two are moving, and I'm very stationary. So,
well, Andrew, it's because you're not on Twitch or you're not on the video. Sometimes we tried that once, and it did not go as well as.
It did not go well, and there are a lot of things I'm not on. So, yeah.
Andrew, we appreciate you coming on and joining us here to kind of go over what was the Islander season, because certainly it was a lot, and there's a lot of ground to cover with the New York Islanders and sort of where things stand going into this offseason. But I want to look back, and obviously one of the big questions surrounding the Islanders now after the 82-game season, kind of goes towards Oliver Wahlstrom and sort of where the organization stands with him and his future with this team and what his role is going to be. Andrew, you were at Breakup Day the other day. You spoke to Wahlstrom along with the other assembled members of the media there. What was that? What was the conversation like with Wahlstrom, and where do you think his head is at now that the season is over?
I think he's in a pretty positive headspace, to be honest with you. He's always he's a cool guy to talk to when he's relaxed, and it's not just at a podium or on Zoom. He's a really good one-on-one interview. He's an interesting guy. And I think it was Kevin Kurtz from the Athletic who got around to asking him about his relationship with Barry Trotz, which and I know I've tried to portray the fact that it's sort of like a father-son type relationship, and Barry is trying to guide this kid, but there has been some tough love in there, and Barry's been critical of Oliver, and he's been critical of Kiefer and Noah at times. Barry uses the media to his advantage when he can, and you know what? Oliver just kind of laughed it off and said, "Yeah, I need some tough love at times. And I thought that was really good recognition by a 22-year-old kid or 21, 22-year-old kid that, no, he doesn't have all the answers. And you know what? I probably thought I had more answers in the world when I was Wally's age than Wally does. And I think that's a really good sign. He knows, you know, he was asked what he wants to work on in the off season. He sort of laughed. He said everything. He needs to get better at everything. You know, he needs to be stronger. And he also brought up a good point, which I think you get, it gets lost a little bit, but you know, the younger prospects, even, you know, Ilya Sorokin talked about this, that not this just completed season, but the previous season, when they played 56 games, it was all within the division. And, you know,
Right.
Wally was talking about, he had never been to California before. He had never, he had never had to jump on a charter and land someplace at 4 a.m. and go play a game the next day. He, you know, he knows he needs to work on his nutrition, you know, to keep his body in tune to be able to do all of that stuff. And he, you know, he was talking about never been to California or Arizona, never played an 82-game season. And Ilya Sorokin was talking about the same stuff. He said, you know, if we're talking about not hockey, this is a beautiful country. He had not seen the country before. And then Ilya said, if we're talking hockey, this was hard. He, you know, 82 games is hard, especially if you haven't gone through it before. And I think this experience for Wally, for Ilya, for Kiefer Bellows is just going to be huge for next season, you know, provided, and I think we know Ilya Sorokin's going to be on the team, but provided Kiefer and Oliver Wahlstrom are on the team next season, this learning experience can only benefit the Islanders.
Yeah, no question, Andrew. And to keep the focus there, I mean, kind of the question of whether or not those guys are going to be on the team next season. If you know, obviously you remember Lou Lamoriello back around the deadline talking about probably having to make some hockey trades this summer. And there's probably a limited amount of names you can look at with this team, right, as far as who they could actually include in one of those said hockey trades who might be worth something to the other team if the Islanders are looking to get anything of value back, right? And I think Oliver Wahlstrom and also Kiefer Bellows are two guys that probably are on that short list. So do you think, let me ask you, do you think both of those players are going to be at training camp for the New York Islanders next year? Do you think maybe one of those guys ends up going the other way in one of those quote unquote hockey trades?
You know, not to be wishy-washy or right down the middle, but I would think it would probably be about 50-50 that both guys are back for next season. Because I agree with you spot on. You know, if you're going to make a hockey trade, these are the kind of guys that other teams are going to be asking about. I mean, more so, you know, obviously they're probably going to be asking about Robin Salo, and they're going to be asking about Noah Dobson, who, you know, you go around the NHL, Noah Dobson is, you know, for what he's worth to the Islanders, it would sort of be like going to the Avalanche and saying, hey, what do you need for Cale Makar?
Right.
Well, it's not going to happen. And, you know, so Noah Dobson is as big and untouchable for the Islanders. But I can't tell you that either Wally or Bellows are untouchables if you want to improve this team.
Yeah, I think you're on the money there. And again, like, I think it's kind of universal throughout Islander country. Everybody seems to know they need a top six winger. They need a top four defenseman, probably a left side defenseman. And when you look at that, and maybe to focus on the D a little bit, and you brought up a name I wanted to talk about in Robin Salo. So, you know, maybe people are penciling in that defenseman from the outside, either playing on the left side with Dobson, or dare I say, you see a split between Pelech and Pulock. Maybe you see Pelech with Dobson and Pulock with the new guy. Do you think Robin Salo has enough, or has he shown enough where maybe he could be paired up with Scott Mayfield out of camp on that left side on the third pair?
I'll be honest, I don't know that he's shown enough yet for me to tell you that he's going to be a full-time player in the NHL. I mean, there have been stretches where he's shown some stuff, and you're pretty encouraged by it. But I also thought it was interesting. We had Bridgeport coach Brent Thompson on a Zoom call. All the days run into each other, so I have no actual idea when we talked to him. It was towards the end of last week. And we obviously were asking him about the young guys. And what he said about Robin Salo was, so he comes over, he plays okay in Bridgeport to start. He gets that call up to the NHL. He plays in the NHL. Islanders start getting healthy. Robin Salo comes back to the AHL. And then if you remember, the next time the Islanders needed a D-man from Bridgeport, they went, I think, Parker Wotherspoon was next man up, and then it was a Grant Hutton. And it was a little while before they got back to Robin Salo. And specifically when they brought up Parker Wotherspoon, Barry Trotz made it very, he pointedly said, well, we brought up the best guy from Bridgeport, and that made people raise their eyebrows. Well, what about Robin? Mm-hmm. And Brent Thompson said, look, Robin Salo went up to the NHL. He came back to the AHL. And I think the exact words Brent used was, I don't know if he thought it was going to be easier, right. but there was a definite sense that Robin Salo, was like, oh, I made the NHL. But look, you can't think like that in the AHL because, look, there's great debate as to whether the AHL or the KHL is the second best league on the planet. Mm-hmm. I often think it's the AHL, to be honest with you, just because it's a more physical league, and you really do have to be a man in the AHL, even though you're starting out sometimes as a very young man. And, Robin Salo learned a very good lesson that nothing is going to come easy in professional hockey in North America. And, so if he can use that, and I thought he was better, the last few games here when he came back up, if he can kind of use that over the summer and come into training camp with the realization that no matter how hard he thought he had to work, or no matter how hard he thought he was working, you got to go 10 steps beyond that. And if he's learned that lesson, then I think Robin Salo can step into the lineup because he's got the physical tools. He's got the talent to be an NHL defenseman. He just has to put it all together.
Talking with Andrew Gross from Newsday here on the line, brought to you by our friends over at Tide Technology. And Andrew, obviously, one of the other big stories from breakup day was the comments from Matthew Barzal and his statement of wanting to be here long term and work out a contract extension. And of course, when anyone hears that now, people have a hard flashbacks to a couple of years ago when someone else, I guess, made a similar circumstance. So I guess to my question to you, Andrew, is how long until Matthew Barzal forces his way out to Seattle? No, I'm kidding.
No.
That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen.
No, but I guess what's the feeling? What's the sense of what Barzal's long-term future with the organization is after this season, considering the year that he had and sort of the, Matthew Barzal's a guy that goes out and has a tremendous amount of skill, but he's not one that puts a ton of goals in the net, or at least, I guess, not as much as many people thought he would. Where do you see his future with the Islanders, and kind of what is his role going forward here?
Well, I mean, for him to be worth that long-term extension, he has to be the number one center. Mm-hmm. And as of right now, Brock Nelson is the number one center. Mm-hmm. So if you saw, I did 5 off-season questions for the Islanders in Sunday's newspaper. And one of them was, when or if do the Islanders open negotiations with Matt Barzal? And I sort of think that the Islanders, I know the contract, his 3-year, $21 million deal runs through the end of next season, but I really feel like that's this off-season question is determining exactly, from the Islanders' standpoint, how do they value Matthew Barzal? Do they value him as the number one center? And if you value him as the number one center, you don't let number one centers walk out the door, right? And the Islanders have had that problem because they let a number one center walk out the door.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, but I do think that's a valuation that the franchise needs to make. You know, if you're asking me whether Matthew Barzal is worth, let's just say conservatively, $8.5 million per season. You want to go there?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because it's Matthew Barzal is going to want more than the $7 million per season. Now, do you think he's a $10 million a year player? Probably not at this point. So let's split the difference. Call it 8.5. Do you want to give him 7 times 8.5 at this stage in his career? And I'm saying that I don't have the answer to that. All I'm saying is the Islanders need to figure out this offseason if they have the answer to that. And if they don't have the answer to that, then you need to start thinking about moving on from Matthew Barzal. Having said that, when Matt said, he wants to be here long term, and I know Islander fans freaked out. I got a million comments. Yeah, we heard the same thing from JT. It's it's deja vu all over again. I'm honestly, and again, I was not here for most of the JT saga. I sort of parachuted in at the end, and I had a rough landing with that one anyway. I've been here for pretty much all of Barzy except his rookie season, and I'm telling you, when he said that, he's not a two-faced guy in any way. He's not, he doesn't have that in his. He's not a good liar. I guess is what I'm saying, or he's not.
He wouldn't say it if he wasn't thinking it.
When he said it, I knew for a fact that that's exactly what he's thinking, is that if they threw a contract, a 7-8 year deal in front of him that was financially amenable to him, he would sign it on the spot. And he would be here and he would be very happy. All the talk about Barzy to Seattle, obviously he grew up outside of Vancouver.
Right.
And he played his junior hockey out in Seattle, but as he points out, the team played about 45 minutes outside of Seattle, and he's from Vancouver, so he was trying to discount, because he hears the chatter. He was trying to discount this. I want to be in Seattle. He says, I've never actually really been in Seattle, except for, a handful of games they would play downtown.
Yeah.
For the most part, they played in the suburbs, and he's a Vancouver guy.
Right.
So, the Matthew Barzal wants to be a Kraken storyline. There are a lot of holes in that.
Well, that's just it. Everybody loves a good narrative, Andrew, even if it makes sense or not.
Very true, Andrew. So what I took away from that is Andrew Gross saying Barzal to Vancouver, not Seattle. Make sure we get that
Thanks
right
for clearing that up for us tonight, Andrew.
on a more serious note, though, Andrew, just getting back to Barzal's contract for a second, is there any sense from the organization too, or I guess maybe some extra pressure to get this resolved sooner rather than later, considering what happened the last time around with contract extension talk or contract talks going into training camp the last time they had to kind of figure this deal out, not wanting to repeat a situation like that?
You would think, right? But look, if you know the way Lou Lamoriello operates, and if you know what Lou Lamoriello says, he always says, when you have time, you use it. He has been saying, I've known Lou now going on 2 decades, and Lou's been in the league 2 decades past that. And from the day he entered the NHL in '87, he has always told people, when you have time, you use it. So would it shock me that they go right to next season, go through this season with Barzal? It would not shock me at all. What I'm saying is the team has to make up its mind what it feels about Matthew Barzal. Now, we know the cone of silence around, Lou Lamoriello, he may have made up his mind already.
Right.
But there's also, to me, there's also as great a chance that the franchise hasn't quite figured out how Matthew Barzal fits in long term yet. What kind of investment to make there. They're almost boxed into a corner, because unless Atu Rati, turns into a number one center, which is not the projection for him, his ceiling seems to be probably a second line center, and there's some thought that he might be a third line center. The Islanders, you strike Barzal from the ledger. You still have Brock Nelson. You still have Jean-Gabriel Pageau. You still have Casey Cizikas. But you don't have a player like Matthew Barzal. Now, does that force the Islanders' hand here into paying, for a guy that maybe they're on the fence? It might, because, again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. You can't let guys like this walk away,
Andrew, I just want to interject here for a moment and just opine that I feel like this is borderline crazy talk right now that we're having here with the prospect of Matt Barzal not being a New York Islander in the long term. There's some decent points being made to, to at least think about that reality of him not being around. But I would be, and now I probably sound like Sean Cuthbert from, what was it, how many years ago when JT was lining up for free agency, right? Because I thought he was staying for sure. But I just don't see a future with this team, with him not being part of it. Just not only with his skill set, not only the fact that he can be a first-line center, but he's also young. I mean, why would you let that go when there's already the issue of how old this team is getting? And you look at Brock Nelson, he's in his 30s, Anders Lee. A lot of those, they got to have a core here. They already know what Barzal brings to the table. I just don't see why management would even think about, letting this guy go unless he turns around and says, guys, you got to pay me $13 million,
Well, here's the thing, and I agree with everything you just said. Unfortunately, in the NHL, everything is looked at through a salary cap prism, right?
Sure.
And my point is, if the Islanders, in their valuation of Matthew Barzal, do not believe he is an 8-year by $8.5 million player, they're going to have a decision to make. And I'm not saying they have or had not made that valuation. I'm just saying that is the starting point. You have to decide in a salary cap world, because what we're talking about is committing to Matthew Barzal for 7 or 8 seasons. And that does limit what the rest of the salary cap will be like. So they have to be 100% committed to the idea that Matthew Barzal is the right guy to invest in. That's all I'm saying.
And that's fair.
This is Hockey Night in New York, and this is On the Line, presented to you by our great, great friends over at Tie Technology. And with us on the line, scaring the crap out of you right now that Matthew Barzal is going to leave the Islanders, is the great Andrew Gross, who is a great friend of ours. He's from Newsday, covers the New York Islanders. I want to interject, too, as well, just a quick update from Bridgeport, where the Baby Islanders are down 1-0 to the Providence Bruins with just about 10 seconds left in the second period.
Plenty of hockey left.
Plenty of hockey left. Shawnee being the optimist that he is. Andrew, looking back at the big-time Islanders, I guess you would call them here, when you look at guys, not Matthew Barzal, but the Oliver Wahlstroms we kind of touched on a little bit, but you look at Kiefer Bellows, you look at Anthony Beauvillier, you look at some of those middle, second, third line guys that
Josh Bailey.
Where did their futures lie? Because now we're in a really interesting point in all of their careers. Josh Bailey getting up there a little bit in age. Obviously, there's other teams that could be interested in a veteran forward like himself. Kiefer Bellows, kind of a question mark throughout this year. I still don't know what to make of him at this point in his career. And obviously, Anthony Beauvillier, when you look at him, he's had some really tremendous moments and moments that I think are probably going to go down in franchise history. And he's had other moments where just not great. So what do you make of these guys, these kind of middle of the pack Islanders right now?
Well, I mean, again, it goes back to what we were discussing earlier, hockey trades, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to make a hockey trade, I guess there's a possibility Josh Bailey could be in a hockey trade, but again, looking at it through the salary cap. What's that?
I said, you bite your tongue. Don't you talk about Josh Bailey like that.
Well, I'm just saying through a salary cap prison, you tell me what team is going to want to take on the last 2 years of Josh Bailey's contract. I don't think there is going to be one to make a hockey trade with Josh Bailey. Now, as far as Anthony Beauvillier, that might be a guy that teams are calling on. He's the right age. He's at the right salary. There's a lot to like about Anthony Beauvillier, and that's probably why Lou Lamoriello would think 3, 4, 5 times about dealing this guy, because he plays a very responsible 200-foot game. He's not just, maybe when he was a younger player, you looked at him and you were like, wow, that's a fast skater, and that's what he was. But now there's a lot more to his game. But the flip side of that is he probably does have some value on the trade market. Again, being the right age and with a decent contract. So it would not shock me if there's at least some chatter that way this offseason. And look, I would, if I'm the GM, I would hate to give up on Bo just because he is young, but he's a very young veteran, right? He was going to his 7th or 8th season. It's remarkable how quick that's gone. But as you alluded to, there's a streakiness to him. And, can you move that for maybe a guy who has maybe less of a ceiling but more consistency? Would that be better for the team? I think those are questions that should be pondered.
Andrew Gross from Newsday, really appreciate you giving us all of this time. I do have one more question for you. And we appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate you putting up with all my nonsense. And you're always great. It's always great to have you on the program. Andrew, obviously this was the first 82-game season that we had in quite a while in the last couple of years with everything that's gone on and the outside world outside of hockey. For you, Andrew, what was maybe your favorite point of the season from, I guess, a professional standpoint from covering this team? What was your favorite point of the year looking back on it all now that you kind of have had your own moment or two to kind of sit down and digest the 2021-2022 NHL season?
So that precludes me from saying the moment you took the Nets beat.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Damn. That was good.
That
was good. I like that.
Love it.
Christian, you know how happy I was to see you when you came back for that last game. So
yes.
I'm just kidding you there.
I know.
I'm sorry. So I was so excited to get out that dig. I forgot what the question was. What was
What was your favorite part of this 82-game season here?
I think it was
on the ice, off the ice.
Getting back to, I think it was just the totality of playing 82 games and having that, it was a bizarre, not normal season, right? And there were far too few games in December. There were far too few games in January. There were way too many games in March and April. But you know what? I liked being just knowing that the team was going everywhere, that I was going everywhere, that there was hockey being played, that there was a full playoffs to look at, not being played in a bubble. You know what? If you ask me, favorite moments, I know this guy did not endear himself to the Islander fans right up until the clock struck midnight. But it was really special being at UBS Arena watching Zdeno Chara score that goal with 43.4 seconds left, and just everything associated with for this guy, for the fans to finally really appreciate this guy this season. I know he was 44 and then he was 45. And I know I saw all the complaints by the fan base about, how he was not fast and how he was hurting the team and all of that. But I'm telling you, it's special when you get to watch these guys. He's a Hall of Fame player. And whether you saw him at the start of his career, the middle, or the end, you're watching one of the greatest players in NHL history. And for him, for the fans to finally give him that moment at the end of the season was really cool and special. So I really enjoyed that. I mean, in not a good way, but just the coincidence of the Islanders being in Montreal and me being in Montreal covering a game when Mike Bossy passed away. That was incredibly emotional. It was very emotional when the Islander fans had their chance to pay their respects at UBS Arena. But you also forget, as Islander fans, you got the blinders on and you look at Mike Bossy, strictly as a New York Islander. But Montreal looked at Mike Bossy as, a child of that city. And they felt a profound loss when he passed away. So that was a moment. And unfortunately, when you think of this season, you think of the sad things. You think of, losing Clarkie. I keep going back to the ribbon cutting ceremony on November 19th at UBS and talking to Clarkie, and he was Clarkie. He was as healthy and he was as funny and he was as engaging as you remember Clarkie, right? And then 2 months later, he's gone. And you can't comprehend that, So, I'll remember November 19th, although it was in retrospect, because that was my last chance really to get a chance to hang with Clarkie a little bit.
Right. Well, Andrew, fantastic stuff there. And I'll leave you with this. I mean, this is probably going to be one of your longer off seasons covering the New York Islanders with the way the season's transpired. Will you be working on your golf game in the summer months coming up now that you have a little extra time to yourself?
I'll tell you what my golf game is. It's either going to the mini golf course or playing Golf Rival on my phone. I have no golf game. My ball, when I get to the driving range, my ball goes about 100 yards and then makes the sharpest left turn you've ever seen in your life. And it invariably hits someone in the head, four greens over. So no, I'm not working on my golf game this summer. You know what I am working on?
What is it?
I'm working on my Frolf game because I love that.
Is that Frisbee golf?
Yeah.
How did you even figure that out?
Because I've actually seen a clip or two on it. It's been a long time, but it just popped into my head, right? You're throwing Frisbees around the golf course, right?
Me and my buddy, he went out and he bought a Frolf set. So you get, it's not a full bag of clubs, but you get 3 different Frisbees. They're 3 different weights. And one's your driver, basically.
Sure, yeah.
That's the heavier one that you fling and it can go further.
Okay.
And then there's sort of a mid-range Frolf Frisbee. That's like your iron.
The word gets me every time. Just Frolf. It just sounds ridiculous.
And then you have your putter, to drive it home. And,
right.
And we have, up near my house, we have. And it's all free, so I'm not paying any greens fees. I'm not paying for the cart. This is all free. It's a little county park with an 18-hole, and it's like Bethpage too, because you have your easier course, your mid-range course, and then you have this freaking black course that you'll get lost in the woods trying to So I'll be working on my Frolf game this summer.
Andrew, it is always a joy to throw in those random questions towards the end because you never know what you're going to get, and that was fantastic. Frolf, I love the word, and I wish you the best of luck working on the Frolf game this summer.
You know what? Because, look, Frolf and beer go together really well, too. You guys should come up we'll take you out on the frolf course, and we'll make a day of it.
You know what?
We're in.
That sounds like a great idea, Andrew. I'm in for some froth. Let's make it happen.
Oop, did we lose Andrew?
Oh, he's there.
You got it. I'll send you the directions.
All right,
it.
Andrew.
Cannot wait.
Andrew Gross of Newsday and the Island Ice podcast. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, buddy. Always great stuff. We'll be talking to you over the summer. Have a great rest of your night.
Oh, can I do one shout out? Because since I am on Twitch and I'm looking at all the questions.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, my friend Thomas Boyle is up there. And Thomas, I'm going to get to your question. I'm going to do another Island Ice episode eventually. I will get to your questions, and thank you for everything. And Christian, Sean, I'm sure I'll talk to you, but enjoy the playoffs and have a great summer, man.
You too, Andrew. Always a pleasure. Take care, all right?
You too. Take care.
All righty.
Andrew Gross from Newsday, Islanders beat writer, of course, also host, the Great Island Ice podcast, which you should always check out after checking out Hockey Night in New York, of course.
And surprise, surprise, another marathon run with Andrew Gross.
Frolf expert.
Frolf. We're gonna go Frolf.
Andrew has a lot of interesting.
He's an eccentric
hobbies.
Individual.
Drummer.
Hip hop drummer,
Frolfer, and he's a big cricket guy. Apparently,
is that right?
He's a big cricket guy.
Wow.
I had a lengthy discussion with him about cricket one night at UBS.
He's
Arena.
a very cultured individual.
There's a lot of random crap he likes.
Well, it's it's all good stuff.
That was hilarious. Yes, all great stuff. I did want to. Andrew mentioned something that I wanted to mention earlier in the show, and we obviously got wrapped up in some of the other stuff. But the Zdeno Chara night, Frolf. Yeah, we got wrapped up in Frolf.
Yeah.
The Zdeno Chara night at UBS Arena, the last game of the season there. It really was a special moment to be there in the building, to see Zdeno Chara get his due. Islander fans who have rightfully kind of given him the business for the better part of the season.
Yeah.
Doing the classy thing, I guess you could call it, by going out there and just appreciating the fact that for 82 games or some facsimile of that, one of the greatest defensemen in NHL history was a member of the New York Islanders again.
I agree with you, Christian. I think it's great and unexpected. Just because of how much crap the guy got all year. I mean, the complaints were rampant from the beginning of the season up until Friday night, essentially. So that kind of caught me off guard, but also made me a little proud of Islander country for looking past all that. And like you said, just honoring a dude who had a lengthy NHL career, a great NHL career, won himself a Stanley Cup, captained an original 6 team to that Stanley Cup, and obviously one of the best defensemen to ever play the game. He now holds the record for most games played as a defenseman. So I was unexpected, but also impressed by Islander country for giving him such a great send-off, and pretty awesome that he did get that goal to kind of cap it all off, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very poetic that it came in the last 43 seconds of the game, which in the third period, especially Islander fans were screaming for him to shoot the puck just about every time it touched his stick.
Right.
And then, of course, after that, the Tampa Bay Lightning coming out and shaking his hand, the entire team shaking his hand. Now, Zdeno Chara has not said whether he is or isn't retiring after this season, but I think that all signs seem to be pointing towards, likely the end of his playing career. And what kind of comes next will be an interesting thing to watch as well, because we've talked about here. Zdeno Chara is a guy that certainly could hold a front office or NHL coaching position for any organization.
I mean, Tampa Bay kind of made the decision for him, right? Like, he can't come back now after shaking everybody's hand. Tampa's kind of like, all right, we'll see you later. It's been great, but, you can't come back now, right? I mean, that's it. The Lightning made that choice for him, so farewell, sir. No, I'm sure if he feels like he can play another year, he will, and he'll probably get a contract somewhere. A one-year deal. Who knows? Obviously, it's got to be the right place, the right circumstances. I don't think he's going to be back on the island as a player.
I think that ship has sailed. I think if he's back here, it's in some sort of managerial position, whether that's a coaching spot, whether that's a special assistant to, whatever. Right. There's a job for him. The same thing with Johnny Boychuk, who's made a couple appearances late in the season as well at UBS Arena.
But I feel like even if Chara was to do something like that, his first destination would be Boston, right? Just because of the kind of the roots that he kind of grew there and whatnot. Like, I don't even think the Islanders would be the team that he would do that with. But you never know.
His family's still up there, I believe.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that his life is still pretty much there. So if he's going to get into the other side of the rink, sort of, so to speak. I think it's going to be up in Boston. But look, even though the season didn't work out the way anybody really wanted to, and you can say what you want about, his contributions to the team this season on the ice, but it was a nice little story from the comeback to the island and, kind of give him the send-off and kind of really putting his career full circle. It would be pretty, storybook if he did close his career as an Islander after opening it.
It's unfortunately it won't be with sort of the success that the Islanders had hoped they would have this season, but still, nonetheless, a very cool tidbit if that is the case. But I did want to just mention that I agreed with Andrew. That was a very cool moment to be there and be in the building to see that. That was something that, even Barry Trotz said he's never seen that in his career. So very, very nice way to end the season. Even in the middle of a loss, it was a very positive feeling, I guess you could say.
I agree, Christian, and the train rolls on here as we approach the hour mark at Hockey Night in New York because, hey, we're wrapping the season, so we're going to go a little longer than
Leafs are up
3-0. 3-0? Yeah. Well, that's not good, at least not for me.
Why is that?
Well, I'm in a little bit of a postseason pool.
Ooh.
It's interesting. It's you got the first round, and you pick who you think is going to win each series, and then you put confidence points to each one.
Okay.
Right? So basically, I got 8. I picked the Panthers, and they're my most confident win, right? So I got 8 points.
You have them going to the Cup final.
I have them winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is just a first-round pool.
Parade in
and I picked Tampa. Florida. I picked Tampa, so Toronto being up 3-0 is not good for me.
It's game 1.
It's game 1, and look, Toronto's been known to collapse. It means nothing.
Yeah.
They might collapse this game, let alone the series. It's early, folks.
It's
early.
A marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. So back to the Isles. We talked about the 8-speed thing. I was going to bring up the whole puck movement thing. I think that's what makes bringing in a top 4 defenseman very important because their breakouts, at least in the first half of the season, left a lot to be desired. And I think they're really going to have to not only move on from the Zdeno Charles of the world, but the Andy Greens too. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like...
I think Andy Green needs to come back just to have his moment in the sun.
Right. I don't know. Look, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with him or to maybe a lesser degree Chara coming back as a very distinct 7th defenseman, like a guy who's not on the regular rotation. You want to bring Andy Green back to have the veteran presence and step into a game if and when somebody gets hurt or whatever. Okay, fine. But I don't need to see either one of those guys in the top 6 anymore. And that's kind of why I started maybe pushing things a little bit for Robin Salo in that discussion with Andrew before. Because if you're looking from within, he's probably the most NHL-ready guy that isn't a regular right now. Now, as Andrew pointed out or questioned, is he ready enough? Maybe we're not sure yet, but I wouldn't... Look, if he had a good camp, and let's say they didn't bring in too much defensive depth beyond this top 4 that I seem to be assuming they're going to get as well... Right. Then, I mean, if he has a good camp, I wouldn't have a problem trying him out next to Mayfield on the third pair because, they're going to have the least amount of minutes by comparison, and he has that puck-moving, speedier pedigree where I think he could complement a guy like Mayfield, and I think it could work. And, you just got to hope that they bring in that other top 4 defenseman that I was talking to. And I do, interestingly enough, think it could... Depending on how this mystery person meshes with the team, maybe you see the breaking up of the Pelech-Pulock pairing because I think Pelech and Dobson could make a lot of sense together. And now that Dobson is really starting to establish himself as the top point producing defenseman, and he can move the puck and he can play an offensive game, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Dobson next to Pelech if they can bring in a guy who can complement Pulock very well, because Pulock has a very good defensive side to his game too, where he can play a good two-way game where you can kind of maybe have 2 hybrid guys there where you bring in a guy who's not only a puck mover on the left side, but maybe a little defensively responsible as well, where, he can complement a guy like Pulock. I mean, I'm kind of just getting into fantasy hockey here a little bit, but I mean, this is what the summer's all about. You look at who they might be able to bring in and how it might be able to work, but I wouldn't be shocked if Pelech and Dobson becomes your top pairing going forward.
It would be interesting to see how long that takes to, I guess, come into effect, so to speak, because I don't know. I could see it happening. I don't know how quickly that becomes your top defensive pairing, though. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just don't know if it's around the corner.
I'm just saying it's possible because look, you saw so much mixing and matching the season as it is. Before Pulick went down with injury, they were already splitting them up because it wasn't working up and down the six, right? They were having problems. They were seeing the speed problems and the puck moving problem with Green in there and Char in there. And they tried to spread the wealth, if you will, between Pelech and Pulick, being their clear top two defensemen in that first half of the season. Dobson didn't really find his game until late January, as we talked about, where he started just putting those points up left and right, and he really found his game. And they kind of got to see what the world looked like with Pelech and Pulick not paired together. And I think now that they have Dobson really coming into his own now, and if they're able to bring in another top four guy, they may be willing to mix the pairings up because it's a different dynamic too. Because Mayfield was your second pairing right D when you had Taves there, right? Mm-hmm. You had Taves and even Leddy before that experiment didn't go well. But it's a different dynamic now where Dobson kind of becomes that puck mover on the right side no matter who he's paired with, right? He was with Andy Green, not a puck mover. He was with Zdeno Chara, not a puck mover, right? So they don't have that left side guy right now. And Pelech could fit that spot. He could fit that spot with Dobson if they want to have him munching minutes with Pelech. They're going to decide who they're going to want paired up and munching the most minutes and playing against other teams' top D and whatnot, right? Top forwards and whatnot, right? And I could see it going that way. And if they bring in that other guy, then they might say, hey, look, you know what? Now we can kind of balance this a little bit more where you have our ultimate top defensive defenseman in Pulick playing with our top offensive forward in Dobson, and that's a nice little marriage there. And then you can mix it up a little bit in the second pairing. And again, I'm kind of just playing, fantasy GM here a little bit, but it's not. There's nothing wrong with having that option if they're able to land that guy that we all kind of know the Islanders need.
It is a fascinating scenario to play out, but they do need. I think the big aspect there is they need to land the player that they need for this
of course.
all to shake out in the way you think.
Well, if they don't, it's gonna be another long season. I'll say that. It's just the truth. They need a top four left defenseman.
No, they do.
Yeah, because
the question is who is that?
That guy is not in the organization right now, and they have to get him somehow, whether it's through free agency or through a trade. But they got to get that guy. And Chris Botta seems to think that they're going to get Chychrun. I hope Chris Botta's right. I mean, look, that's just him throwing. I don't think that means Chris Botta knows anything. But, I mean, that's the guy you go after. He's playing on an Arizona team who's not going anywhere.
No, they're going to college.
They are going to get an education. That's right. They're going to college. But, I mean, I'm sure he'd be happy to leave Arizona. So if the Islanders can offer Arizona something enticing, something that can make it work, that's the guy you go after. But, I mean, I don't know do you have the list of available free agents this summer?
I have a list of top 30 free agents.
You do. Now, are there any interesting defensemen on there? Because I know there's some interesting forwards.
There's some interesting forwards. I don't know if there's too many interesting defensemen.
Yes. And the reason why I raise that question is because I think they're going to have to go the trade route for that D. And I think that's what Louis was talking about when he said hockey trades. Because I think to get that defenseman, I think that's what they can do. And they might have to. Because we've talked about on the show how they don't have a lot of assets to deal with, right?
No.
And I kind of feel like with the assets that they do have to make a deal, one deal, it's got to be for that D, and they got to go the free agent route for the forward.
No,
you got a smirk on your face here. What do you got here?
No, nothing.
Okay.
No, that's probably the route that you kind of have to go at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are, as you alluded to, there are a number of interesting free agents that maybe could fill gaps here and there for the Islanders. But defensively, it's not, there's no names that jump out and go, oh, wow, that's someone the Islanders need to pursue right now. It really does come from finding that right deal, finding the right trade partner. Maybe that is Arizona just because of the circumstance that they're in. As limited as the Islanders' assets are right now, you have to look at a team like Arizona and go, that's a team that's essential. That's an organization that's in disarray perpetually.
It's not wrong.
And they are probably more likely and more open to at least getting something for Chychrun before things get too out of hand in that situation too. So I would imagine that's why the Islanders and Chychrun are always sort of linked to one another. I mean, it's understandable. The Islanders have also kind of been, I guess, the Chychrun chase, whatever you want to label it.
Right, but they're not going to be the only
ones.
ones.
Now. No, they're
not going to have to offer the best package to make that happen too, and that's something we have to remember. And
Matthew Barzal.
And do they have the assets to make that happen? I know you. We know you. Well, I don't know if everybody else does. I know you are. Yeah. Well, look. It's going to be a long summer. Lou's got a lot of work to do. He's going to be on the phones, and he's going to be talking to agents. He's going to be talking to general managers. And maybe having a longer offseason gives him a little bit of a head start on that. Instead of focusing on the team during the playoffs, he gets to focus on what happens this summer.
Yep.
And we'll see. We'll see. But top 6 winger, top 4D, you got to go that route. And they're going to need some depth D as well.
Yeah.
I think they I mean, unless they're confident in a guy like Sal or something like that, because you got Dobson, Pelican Pullock, and then you got Mayfield, who kind of doesn't have a partner now either. You need 2 left side defensemen. If you're bringing back Andy Green, I don't feel great about that. I don't feel, to be in the regular rotation in the top 6. But they like their veterans, so you never know. I mean, Clutterbuck's back, Martin's back.
They do love their veterans.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. But just to keep talking a little bit about the
game.
The season. What, 3-3?
Islanders Providence.
There we go. See, the Islanders are in the playoffs. They're just playing
Different
in Connecticut.
Islanders.
Yeah. the different Islanders.
The different.
But that's great to hear. 1-1. All right, cool. Because it's only a 3-game series.
Grant Hutton with the goal.
Is that right?
Yeah. Otto Koivu
See, all
gets
that
the
experience up with the big boys really helped him out.
Yeah. He's got a goal right now.
All right. You love to see it. So,
you know who had an assist on the Providence goal?
Who?
Aaron Ness.
Oh, that's funny. Aaron Ness. I didn't even know he was in their system. How about that? Former Islander prodigy, Aaron Ness. Didn't really pan out. So, goal scoring. Actually, better by a hair than last season, funny enough. Made the playoffs last year, went to the conference finals, bounced out this year. Slightly better because of the second half that they had with goals.
Right.
But still, ultimately, it's a problem. They're averaging, it was 2.79 goals for per game this year. Under 3 goals. It was less than what they were giving up. What's funny is they were 8th overall in goals against. And it was like 2.83. So they were still giving up more goals than they were putting in, which obviously is not a winning combination.
Not ideal.
So even though the defense is still pretty strong, the goal scoring is still a problem. And you look at the special teams, and the power play actually improved. 12th overall, 22.1%. PK was 4th overall, 84.2%. So what does that tell you, Christian? It means you weren't doing well 5-on-5.
No.
Great special teams.
Which is weird because that's always been the Islanders' bread and butter.
Right.
And it's always reversed. We always talk about the special teams. It's, it's got to be better, this and that. And this season, and maybe it speaks to where things sort of went wrong for the Islanders, their special teams were very strong. Their 5-on-5 game really struggled. And you could again, it goes back to sort of that inability to do what the Islanders did so well, and that was kind of transition the puck from defense to offense, like they've done so skilled in years past. And that's really kind of been the crux of their offense, or creating those offensive opportunities in seasons past, was being able to play that strong defensive game, moving the puck out of the zone, through the neutral zone, and into the attack, and getting into position quicker than their opponent. And this year, they just really weren't able to do that. They struggled to kind of gain the zone cleanly. They struggled to move the puck out of the defensive end of the ice. They all of the things that traditionally the Islanders have done well in the past were sort of not. They weren't terrible, but there were limitations to what they were what they were able to do, and how successful they were in doing that.
I'm with you, and it's true, and it ended up being just such a problem for this team, and we've talked about it before, like the transition game, getting the puck. I mean, look, if you're preventing goals, that's fine, but you have to be able to move the puck out of your own zone to start scoring goals on the other side, and I think it's a combination between the transition and also just how snake bitten, if you want to use that term, some guys were in that first half of the season, whether you're looking at the P guy, the 3 Ps, Pajot, Parisi, and Palmieri, were the guy that they couldn't buy a goal in the first half of the season, and it took the second half for them to get there. Now, interestingly, did that also coincide with Noah Dobson finding his game and becoming more of a offensive weapon himself and helping those guys to get those goals? I think there's something to be said there. Maybe that kind of, they kind of go a little hand in hand there with Dobson being able to bring the puck out of the zone himself, get himself a ton of assists. I think he had 38 assists on the season. Yeah, he had 13 goals, 38 assists. And, maybe that had a lot to do with it. And maybe that's going to help in a full 82-game season now where he's going to be that type of player from the get-go instead of waiting until, 4 months into the season, 3-4 months into the season.
Definitely, because it plays a part in it because, as we've talked about, the loss of Nick Leddy, the loss of Devon Tays a couple of years before that.
Yeah.
All those guys, you've seen Noah Dobson kind of, I'm not saying he filled that void later in the season, but you saw him get a little bit more comfortable in that aspect of his game.
Mm-hmm.
And that was important for what the Islanders, style and their game plan is usually. So to at least have someone that can do that a little bit better, than some of the other guys they had on defense. Because when you look at the other guys they had back there aren't a ton of puck-moving defensemen. Andy Green is not that. Zdeno Chara was not that. Scott Mayfield, when he was healthy, was not that. So it was it was very limited in what they were able to do and how well they were able to move the puck up the ice. So to have someone start to develop like that, I think that certainly played an aspect into it. It's going to be interesting to see how well that translates next season and how comfortable he is with different aspects of his game going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I agree. I mean, look, it's unfortunate we have to wait all the way until July to see what this team may or may not do, just to change things up. It's going to be a long couple of months, especially without Islander playoff hockey to watch. But hey, you got NHL playoff hockey to watch, which is going on right now, and
AHL playoff hockey to watch.
That's right. You got
there's Islanders playoff hockey to watch.
Yeah, you get invested in the Bridgeport Islanders. You never know. 1-1 still, right?
Oh, I exited the screen.
Oh, that's okay.
But yes, 1-1 still.
Well, it is 4-0 Leafs now.
Wow. Mitch Marner?
Thanks to the chat here. Yeah, thanks to the chat. Apparently, the Leafs have 2 shorthanded goals.
Wow.
So, but you know what? Tampa dropped game 1 of the Islanders, too.
Wow.
So, again, it may not mean anything. But 4-0, I'm surprised. I thought Tampa would, be a little stronger out of the gate here.
Apparently not.
Apparently not.
Apparently not.
Is what it is. So, why don't we break it up here a little bit? Why don't we go to What's on Tap real quick?
Okay.
How about that? All right. Fantastic.
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, brought to you by RJ Daniels, American Bar and Grill.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for What's on Tap, brought to you by RJ Daniels, American Bar and Grill. Christian, the Islanders don't have any games left in this season. So what's on tap?
Frolf.
A lot of Frolf.
A lot of Frolf.
Frolf is on tap. Maybe some golf. And I know that's the joke.
No, they're just playing Frolf now.
You think so?
Frolf.
You think the Islanders have... I don't think Hal Clutterbuck has given up golf for Frolf because he's apparently a very good golfer.
He's a big golf guy.
Yeah.
He is a big golf guy. There's a lot of beach time in their future. A lot of
right.
vacation
a little
time.
vacation. Yeah, maybe the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe out to Europe. Maybe Spain.
Maybe. It's possible.
All
of them.
Portugal, coastal countries.
San Diego. I don't know.
San Diego. Yeah. Maybe going out west. Yeah. Look, folks, it sucks. No
Trips
playoff.
to Blue Line.
Trips to Blue Line Deli, yes.
Or RJ Daniels.
RJ Daniels. Great Planiels.
That's what I hear.
Get to RJ Daniels.
What
yeah.
if they're playing...
Or Oyster Bay Brewing Company.
I wonder if RJ Daniels, will they play Bridgeport Islander games on the TV now?
It's a great question.
Should find out.
We should find out. I'm pretty sure they're telecasting all the, or I should say broadcasting, all the playoff games at AHL, theAHL.com. Like, they weren't able to get AHL.com.
Which is hilarious.
So their web address is theAHL.com.
The number of times I've went, I'm like, oh, let me look something up on the AHL website. I'll just type in AHL.com, and it takes me to something else. What is AHL?
Whoever owns AHL.com must be demanding a king's ransom for that web address. Because for the league to just go with theAHL.com means it's a pricey domain, which is pretty funny.
Takes me to, looks to be some sort of research company.
I guess they're really proud of that AHL.com web address that they have because they're not willing to give it up.
No,
what a shame.
It directs to man.com/AHL. I don't know what this is.
I don't know.
Man AHL, one of the longest running systematic managers.
Well,
technology-empowered active investment management focused on delivering performance and client portfolio solutions.
So here we are, Hockey Night in New York.
The American Hockey League.
And we're researching websites here for you now. So we're
all.
broadening our horizons here.
That's
at
what happens when
HN91.
the Islanders get knocked out of the
But more seriously, beyond the frolf and the golf and the vacations, you got the draft coming up a little later, not in June this year. That is July 8th?
July 7th and 8th. It's a Thursday and a Friday.
Also interesting. Usually it's a Friday, Saturday. What's up with the Thursday, Friday thing?
Don't know.
You need to get to the bottom of that. I need to understand why.
Because I don't know.
Okay. Well, and then a week later, you have free agency.
I don't know.
You have free agency a week later on the 13th. Yeah? Am I getting that date right at least?
Yes.
So then that's less than a week later. That's like 5 days. 5 days later.
5 days later.
Okay.
Free agency, brah.
At least we're getting closer to the normal days. You know, usually the draft is end of June. Usually, obviously, July 1st, a week later, is when free agency is. So we're getting closer. Next season should be the closest thing to a normal season we've seen. This year was close. We had 82 games, but there was still a lot of nonsense. Hopefully next year is a little more normal. And, they start in early October. The Islanders don't have to start with a 13-game road trip.
Right.
And, so that'll be better. But, yeah, folks, that's what's on tap for the New York Islanders. So.
Yep.
That was What's on Tap, brought to you by RJ Daniels, American Bar and Grill.
That's right, folks. That was What's on Tap brought to you by the great RJ Daniels. So we covered a lot of bases already. We covered a lot of these players with Andrew and even here a little bit. So I'm just trying. Let me give you a little rapid fire here. Staying or going?
Go.
Semi Varlamov.
Going.
Going.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anthony Beauvillier.
Going. I think he probably gets packaged in some sort of deal.
Josh Bailey.
Staying.
Kiefer Bellows.
Staying.
Oliver Wahlstrom.
Staying.
So you think both of those guys will be staying? There'll be enough room for both of those guys and Josh Bailey.
I think it'll end up being Wahlstrom and Bellows playing back and forth like we saw last year again.
Really? Neither one earns a regular spot?
Not until the midway point when I would imagine Wahlstrom would finally figure it out.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
Interesting. So can you bring up Cap Friendly from you for a moment? Can you do that? Because both you and Andrew said that the Islanders are going to have some issues with the cap if they're trying to bring some. You okay?
Yeah.
Bringing in some guys. So where do they stand right now? Because I think literally they only have 2 guys that they quote unquote need to sign. That's if they want to bring them back, and then it's a full roster again without making any other moves. What's their cap space looking like right now?
It says final cap space is at $2,607,124.
That's for this season. I'm talking about next season.
Oh, I have no idea. They have just about everyone under contract except Kiefer Bellows, who is an RFA.
Correct.
Noah Dobson is an RFA.
And he's going to get some money.
He's going to get some money. Chara Green, Sebastian Aho is an UFA G6.
Now, aren't you able to see what the cap space is for next year? If you go towards the top, you're at the bottom right now. You want to go down a little bit here. It should be somewhere. Yeah, maybe. No, it's not there. Okay, scroll down a little bit there. Okay, it's not there. But they're going to have more than that $2 million because it's going up a little bit. You have a couple of contracts that are coming off, and they might have some wiggle room. Maybe not a ton, but I don't know if they have to completely flip the roster upside down in order to make the ads that we're talking about here. Now, I don't even know if they're going to have to deal a Varlamov in order to make that happen. But they're going to have to probably...
Robin Salo is also an RFA this year.
Oh, okay.
Parker Witherspoon is an RFA with arbitration eligibility.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be too concerned about
Michael
his contract.
Michael Del Cole is still here.
You know what's funny about Del Cole? I forgot he was even part of the franchise.
And so is Otto Koivula, who has arbitration rights this offseason.
Okay, all right. These are all guys that are going to get minimum contracts, probably 2-way. If they bring them back, they're Bridgeport Islanders. Yes. And it's funny, I only was reminded of Del Cole being part of the franchise because I was looking to check out the playoff situation, and I saw them interviewing Del Cole, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's right. He's still there. How about that? So, yeah. So thank you, Mike4562 Co. I think we have around $12.5 million in space. That sounds about right the last time I was looking at it. So they're not completely up against it. Now, obviously, Noah Dobson's going to take up a nice chunk of that. If they add another depth defenseman, that'll be maybe between $1 million, $2.5 million. If they bring in that top 4 defenseman, that's going to bring in some more money, but you would assume that the salary going back the other way, whether that's in the form of Anthony Beauvillier, Josh Bailey, less likely, and or an Oliver Wahlstrom or a Kiefer Bellows. So, they're not in the dire straits cap-wise that they were previously where, Lou Lamoriello had to, basically summon a miracle in order to get rid of Andrew Ladd and send him over to Arizona, get rid of that contract. And, you had to dance around a little bit with the long-term IR and stuff like that. So I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue or as much of an issue as it has been in summers past. So I do think they can construct that roster that most people are hoping that they can without having to sacrifice a critical piece like a Devon Taves like they had in the past, or to a lesser degree, Nick Leddy. And, well, also you lose Eberle and Leddy in the same summer, and, that kind of helped them get out from under that, dire situation with the cap, right? I mean, that was basically $10 million off the cap there, and now it's a little more comfortable. So I think they can make that squad that could, get back to competing for a deep playoff run, assuming they get the right guys. I'm just saying I think the money now can allow for it, even if you still do have to trade perhaps a Beauvillier or and/or Wahlstrom, or if you really got to get rid of some money, Semyon Varlamov. I think he goes if Lou says, you know what, I need some more cap space here. I think that's when Semyon Varlamov goes, because I think the Islanders prefer to have him stay and finish out that contract, just like Varlamov. He's already come out and said he wants to stay.
No, he wants to stay.
Yeah.
Well, 'cause of course he wants to stay. He's making $5 million next year and want to stay too.
Well, he would be making $5 million whether he was traded or not.
Also, he has the difficulty of getting rid of Varlamov additionally is that he has some say in where he goes.
16-team, no trade clause.
I thought it was a 14-team trade clause. But regardless, it's two teams. Yeah, but he has a say in where he's going.
Yes, and as Mel Armenia 22 reminds us, Hickey's contract finally comes off the books.
Yes, he's done.
They no longer have to pay Thomas Hickey.
Free agent.
Yeah,
forgot about that.
Yeah,
I actually didn't even scroll that deep into cap friendly for that to come up.
Yeah,
it's
he was
last
there.
Thing on the
before Komarov went back to the KHL, he was eating up some money when he was down at the bridge. So yeah, I mean they're chipping away at that cap space here and there. So look, I think Lou's going to have the room to make the moves. It's just a matter of finding the right dance partner, getting the right guys, and maybe there will be some happiness in Islander country this summer.
Maybe
we'll see.
We'll see.
We will see. So Christian Arnold, why don't we take a break and come back and talk about some heroes?
Wonderful.
Sound good to you?
Wonderful.
Folks, I want to thank you all for hanging out with us on your Monday night at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the hero of the week.
Customer service is the backbone of any great business, and reliable telecommunication is essential to keeping your client base happy. Introducing Ty Technology, a low-cost, flexible internet phone service founded on the idea that every customer deserves exceptional service while providing simple setup and management and easy integration to clients across the country. Ty Technology will not only create a custom solution tailored to your specific needs, but will partner with you to provide a competitive edge to you and your clients. And if you need support, you won't be routed to an automated call center in another country. You'll get a live representative that had a personal hand in building your account. So Islander fans, if your business is looking for a change from companies like Spectrum, Verizon, or Optimum, Ty Technology is offering 3 free months of service for any of its affordable packages. Just call 516-856-7800. That's 516-856-7800. Or visit them on the web at TieTechnology.com. That's Tie, T-I-E, Technology.com. Ty Technology, the right choice for your internet phone service.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear this song, that means it's time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Half Price Hero, which is the Selly with grilled roast beef, sauteed onion, mushrooms, fresh mozzarella on a toasted garlic hero. But with this being the end of season edition of Hero of the Week, we're actually going to do Hero of the Year, Hero of the Season. So Christian, as we've done here in this segment, we typically allow you to go first.
Oh, thank you.
So, Christian, why don't we do that again? Who's your hero of the season for the New York Islanders?
I think this is an easy decision.
Okay.
It is the goaltender, number 30, Ilya Sorokin.
Tell us why, Christian.
Because he's good. One of the few bright spots on the Islanders roster, finishes the season with a 26-18-0 record, or 26-18-8 record. I don't know why they keep the tie on the NHL website stats chart.
I don't think they get a loss when they lose in the shootout. I don't think.
Right, it's considered an OTL. That's
Okay,
what that is.
Okay,
win, loss, OTL. So I don't know why they keep tie on that. Anyway,
okay, fair enough.
Ilya Sorokin was just phenomenal. You saw a real maturation in his game and his playing style and his comfortability. You know, the first time he's playing an 82-game season, he plays 52 games this year. That's the most he's played in his career. Obviously, he had one season under his belt after this year, and I think he played, 12, 13 games last year in that 56-game campaign that the Islanders played. Something around there.
Something like that, maybe a little more than that, maybe.
So, regular season games. I'm not talking about playoffs.
Okay.
But yeah, so he plays 52 games, which when you look at his playing time, he finishes with a 2.40 goals against and a 9.25 save percentage. And 52 games, by the way, is one shy of what Igor Shesterkin played, and he's the front runner for the Vezina Trophy this year. So you look at Ilya Sorokin. If the Islanders had made the playoffs, I mean, you're talking about a battle of New York goaltenders for one of the NHL's most prestigious awards in the Vezina Trophy, and I think Sorokin is deserving of even being in that conversation without the Islanders even going to the playoffs.
He's gotten a little chatter recently, which is nice.
So it's hard to not pick anyone but Sorokin, considering the year he had, the success that he had with the Islanders organization, and the growth in his game, and kind of taking that step and becoming the guy now that you can comfortably and confidently say that he is now the goaltender of the future for the New York Islanders, and not even the future, but he's the goaltender now for the New York Islanders, and that he's the real deal.
I don't think there's any arguing that, but I am going to accept that challenge as far as finding another hero of the season, and I am going to give that to none other than number 8, Nobson, better known as Noah.
For his name?
Dobson. Yes, for the top nickname of the 2021-22 campaign, Noah Dobson. No, he did a lot more than just get a great accidental nickname. 51 points in the season. First defenseman on the New York Islanders to crack 50 points since Mark Streit, the former captain. Mm-hmm. That happened a long time ago. Yes. And again, the fact that he did it with only really getting his game going at the end of January says a lot and makes you wonder what else this gentleman can do, playing with the confidence that he has now in his game and the abilities that he's shown, where can the guy crack 60 points as a defenseman playing 82 games the way he has, getting more ice time? Because that's another thing, too. Earlier on in the season, he was still being shielded a little bit out there. He still was getting a little less ice time, and it wasn't until he broke out where he starts hitting 20 minutes, 22 minutes, and what have you. So you see that over an 82-game season, and maybe Noah Dobson puts up even more than 51 points as long as he's healthy, right? So, I mean, a huge year for him. I think you're spot on with Sorokin. I don't think you can go wrong with either guy here. I think it's huge that Sorokin has established himself as a number 1 goalie, and I think he's really hit that top 1 percentile of expectations that Islander fans had for him. Because I think even if he was a capable starter, a good goalie who could win you a game every now and then, people would have been satisfied with that. But the fact that he's exceeded that and he took that whole best goaltender outside of the NHL and now has turned into one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. Says a lot about what he's going to be able to do for this team when he gets a little more run support from the guys in front of him. And it's great for him to get a little Vezina chatter, even though he's obviously not going to win the trophy. They didn't make the playoffs. They didn't get enough wins, and that stuff, whether you agree with it or not, carries more weight. But he was right up there, top 5, I think, with goals against average, save percentage, or he was right there. So he's definitely deserving of the talk there. And look, if they do become they get back to that success that they had previously this year, then he's going to be very seriously talked about as a Vezina candidate. And you look at Noah Dobson, And you never know. Maybe he's a guy who can start creeping into Norris conversation. Because, look, if you can crack 50 points as a defenseman, you enter that conversation even if it's on a minimal level. I mean, 50 points is something that, again, Islander fans haven't seen in a long time. And as good as Mark Streit was for the New York Islanders, Noah Dobson's ceiling is much higher than what Mark Streit was here. And that's why I think when I start saying Norris Trophy and stuff like that, he's gonna be able to have a much more well-rounded game. And he's still such a young guy. And I think that's another huge development that while they still do need to obviously round out the defense this summer going into next year, I think he maybe makes it a little more comfortable because he's been able to develop into what he has. Because look, in October, November, December, you're still wondering kind of where his place was going to be. And we were still maybe saying, okay, maybe he's going to be a middle pairing right D behind Pulock. And I think most of us would have been all right with that. But now we're seeing his ceiling is much higher than that, and that's very promising for this team. So with all that word salad out of the way, Noah Dobson, my hero of the season.
Great. Nice pick.
I think they were both excellent picks. Sad face Thomas Panik. Yeah, sorry, Thomas Panik. It just didn't work out for you. But Ilya Sorokin, Noah Dobson
Noah Dobson
are your heroes of the year. So, Christian, we have hit the 90-minute mark of the night. I think we covered pretty much everything as far as talking about what this team did, what it didn't do. You know, we gave you a little rapid fire there on guys who are staying or going. I mean, I don't think we need to go up and down the roster and review every player. I mean, you could talk about Palmieri and Pajot, how they bounce back. You can talk about Mayfield missing the end of the year, which is a shame. I think prior to that, he had a fairly solid season. I think he kind of, you know, he's still the same defenseman he was over the last couple of seasons. Varlamov, I still think deserves a little more credit than he got this year. I think people got very caught up in how well Sorokin has performed this year, but I still think Varlamov was solid, and he really didn't get goal support from this team from the vast majority of games that he played. I mean, he had quite a few losses this season, but I think they were more on the team in front of him than Varlamov himself. I'd be happy to have him back there as the 1B now behind Ilya Sorokin. And look, I still think this team could have been better. You know, if things had went their way in certain aspects this year, would they have been good as the past two seasons? No, I don't think so. At the top of the show, we talked about the warts that were exposed this year, and I think those are things that are going to need to be addressed this summer. But the core is there. They still have some good young guys in the system. They still have some good veterans in the system, and I still think they have a great mix to compete for the postseason next year and go far, especially if they get those positions filled that we've been talking about. So with that said, Christian, why don't we go into Questions Brewing, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
All right.
Let's do it.
It's time for Questions Brewing, brought to you by Oyster Bay Brewing Company, Long Island's Gold Coast Brewery.
That's right, folks. It's time for Questions Brewing, brought to you by Oyster Bay Brewing Company and their fabulous mango seltzer. It's getting warmer out there, folks. It's seltzer time. I like my seltzers in the summer. I like it year-round, but definitely during the warmer months. Nice little pint glass with ice. Very refreshing.
Sounds delicious.
Sounds delicious. All right,
no,
Christian.
It does sound delicious.
It is delicious. So, Christian, let's go. What do you got for me?
T-Boyle 13 Question Bruin. Do you see Samuel Bolduc, challenging for a roster spot this fall?
I don't. I hope he has a great camp, and I hope he turns some heads, and I hope he has us talking about potentially making the squad at some point next year. But I don't think he's going to make the team out of camp. Because I think if that is in the cards, that means Louis didn't do his job this summer. That's what I think.
Louis
Lambs. What else you got for me?
Lambs. I'm going to need you to go back because I had to refresh my page.
Oh, no. So you needed me to give you a longer-winded answer.
I did.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. I didn't screen this one, so this better be a good one. Mike 4625Co. Question Bruin. Lots of discussion going on about Barzy. Some fans say he underperformed, including Butchie. Others say Barry's system and lack of talent is to blame. What say you?
I think that there is and I think we talked about this. I don't know if it was on the show, but I think we talked about this. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what Matthew Barzal's skill set really is. And I think when you look at his style of play, he is an assist man and a very talented assist man. You look at his career, and aside from the the Rookie of the Year season that he had, the Calder Trophy season. I think it's become abundantly clear that Barzal's a guy that he can skate circles around people and he can set up a lot of great plays, but he's not going to score, I think, as many goals as people imagine him to score. Or thought he would have scored with where he was drafted and the expectations that have been placed on him. That's not a knock on Matthew Barzal's game. I think that's a more fundamental flaw in how people understand what his skill set is. He's not a goal scorer. I'm sorry, that's just not the person that he is or the player that he is.
I think that's more by choice. I think he has a good shot and he's capable of scoring. He's shown it. He's had some great goals. When he elects to shoot, they go in. I think it's like a poor man's Josh Bailey syndrome, where he just elects...
rich man's Josh Bailey syndrome.
Well, I'm saying that he elects to pass a little more than he should in some circumstances. I just don't think it's as blatantly offensive as Josh Bailey when he does it.
Right.
Like there certainly have been some plays where I'm like, Matt, why didn't you just shoot that? I just don't... he hasn't reached the level of Josh Bailey. I hope he doesn't. But I think that if he just chose to shoot the puck more in certain circumstances, then you're gonna see more goals on his total. Now, obviously the train has left the station with Josh Bailey. The guy's in his 30s. Like Josh Bailey is what he is as far as that goes. Matt Barzal is still in his 20s, mid 20s, right? Young 20s. He's still got a chance to maybe, start adjusting his game a little bit towards shooting the puck. More. But look, if anybody should be passing, it should be Matt Barzal because he's a phenomenal passer, and he does set up a lot of great goals. And he had, 59 points in the season? I would argue he would have had more if guys that were flanking his side in the first half of the season could have finished a little bit more than they did. I mean, he had a lot of great setups in the first half that just weren't getting buried. They were either hitting posts, going wide, whatever the case may be. Now, that still means his goal total would be low, but you might be looking at closer to 70-something points instead of 59 to 60 if he had some guys that could finish. But, look, if you can get a guy who can finish for him, you don't necessarily need Matt Barzal to score goals. Like Joe Thornton in his prime. Did anybody say, I could do without Joe Thornton putting up 96 points a season because he doesn't score enough goals? Joe Thornton would put up, maybe 15-goal seasons? Mm-hmm. And I'm obviously guesstimating here without having the numbers in front of me. But, 65, 75 assists with 15 goals? He's still your first-line center, and he's still setting somebody up for those goals, whether it was Setaguchi or whoever it was back then, right? But the point is that Matt Barzal as a primary assist man is fine as long as he has somebody flanking him who can put the goals in. And we saw Lee and Eberle doing that to a degree for a couple of years. But I think they got to bring in a guy especially if they're going to keep Lee with Nelson, which I think is what they're leaning towards. They got to bring in a guy, whether it's a Philip Forsberg or what have you, that can put those goals in. And I don't need Barzal to score goals as long as somebody's putting them in the net.
And I think that's a rational explanation and answer to that. I just think people assume that he's the guy that needs to go out and score 30 goals a season. That's just not his game.
No.
Even in his best year, that wasn't his game. So
I agree.
I think that's sort of what you're saying, and I agree with Sean in the sense that if he had someone else on that line to move the puck to that could finish on a player too, he would have more points this season. But I don't necessarily hang that on Matthew Barzal per se.
Right. And we've kind of alluded to the thought that maybe he's not the type of star that makes the players around him better like some of the other ones are out there. And I'm not saying that as an absolute truth. He's still got plenty of time to prove otherwise. But you look at this season, did he really make his line mates that much better? I don't know, because they weren't finishing and they weren't putting the points up. So it didn't look great from that aspect this year, but it doesn't mean he can't do it going forward. I still think he's a first-line center in this league. Whether he's in the upper echelon with guys like Sidney Crosby and stuff like that, that's another completely other question. But you can be a first...
Sidney Crosby's a superstar. Matthew Barzal's not a superstar. Sorry.
He's not. Look, that would be an unfair comparison. He is not at the same level as Sidney Crosby at the same age as Matt Barzal. It's just absolutely not. But it doesn't mean he can't be a good first-line center that puts up first-line points.
I think he just needs the guys around him to be a little bit better.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. T-Boyle 13 questions brewing. Who do you see getting traded on the Islanders this summer?
I think we kind of addressed that.
We addressed it a little bit. I mean, you did your rapid fire before. I think Bailey stays because of his contract. I think I would not be surprised at all if one of Bellows or Wahlstrom is gone. And there's something telling me it might end up being Oliver Wahlstrom if one of those two guys got to go. But then again, maybe it's just Bavillier and they both stay. I don't know. But one of those three guys are going. Bavillier, Wahlstrom, and Bellows. I would have to think at least one of those three guys are getting dealt this summer. Do you got one or you need me to go to the next one?
No, I need you to go to the next one.
All right, questions brewing. T-Boyle 13 again. Do you see Wahlstrom starting in Bridgeport next season? No. I think if he's part of the Islanders franchise, he's going to be up at the big boys. Now, here's a great question from Mike 4652Co. With Detroit relieving Blashill of his duties, is this the year we lose Lane Lambert?
I mean, everyone feels like that. This is the year. I don't know. I mean, they're going to go through an extensive search and the usual nonsense, and I'm sure he'll be one of the candidates that are brought in. I mean, realistically, it's crazy to imagine a team hasn't picked up on him right at this point to lead an organization or to coach an organization. So, I don't know. I mean, it could very well happen. It could very well not. I think that's kind of been the feeling. I think you talked to Barry Trotz earlier this year. In years past, I think he's even kind of dumbfounded that it hasn't happened yet, considering just the pedigree and the accolades that Lane Lambert comes with and sort of the respect that he has around the league. But you also look at the NHL, and it is an old boys network that everyone
Right.
gets the same job somewhere else. So they're always the first ones to get it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You look at guys like Gerard Gallant or John Tortorella or Alain Vigneault, guys who have had, monikers.
The recycling bin.
Exactly. They've had success somewhere, so then they get another job somewhere else. And you have a guy like Lane Lambert who's been waiting in the wings and who's been interviewed for different jobs and just hasn't gotten his chance for whatever reason. So is this the summer it finally happens? I don't know. I don't necessarily I'll cop out like Andrew did on one of the questions. I'll just say it's 50-50.
Well, Mike, I think it was a good question, and you got to figure there's going to be at least another one or two coaching vacancies in addition to that Detroit vacancy. But Detroit is interesting because they're a young team that's trying to come up, and maybe giving a guy like Lane Lambert his first shot with a team like that could be something that works. So you never know. You never know. Okay, I guess I'm doing the next one too.
Is there a next one?
Let's see. Okay, you already did the Boldu question.
that's the last
I'm literally
one.
just going through the chat here
That's the
and
last
making
one.
sure. Okay, so it looks like that'll do it for
Yes,
our
sir.
chat questions here in Questions Brewing. Christian, do you have any questions?
Do I have any questions? I do not.
Christian has no questions. I'm going to ask you a question, Christian, because we ask it a lot of our guests, and I want to get your assessment here. And you're obviously, very brutal when it comes to your assessment of the Islanders, because you have to do it because you want to be a heel, and you have to do it maybe because you're actually, talking some truth and talking seriously. But, I mean, do you think with this core and for all of its warts and flaws and for all the positive things that they still have going on, I mean, do you think that Lou Lamoriello can steer this ship back into the playoffs, but also to be as competitive as they have been the past couple of years with the right moves this summer? Can they get back to the deep playoffs next year?
If they can't do it next year, then ownership has to have a serious sit down and figure out what their next move is, because then something is wrong, and you have to then reconsider what the process and you're going about to try and make this franchise. I think they still have the pieces. You look at Brock Nelson being a near 40 goal scorer this season. You look at the development of Noah Dobson. You look at the development of Ilya Sorokin, which has been the Islanders' biggest Achilles heel since the days of Rick DiPietro, and that's goaltending, of course. Finally having someone that's here and
within the organization.
It seems like they're stable and ready to take on the challenge head on. And then you look at Anders Lee. You look at some of those top six guys that they still have some juice left.
Yeah.
I think the pieces are there. It comes down to making the right additions in the offseason and patching the holes that the Islanders weren't able to or didn't patch during last offseason. Of course, that starts with the number one thing we've talked about, and that's getting a top four defenseman to be able to move the puck a little bit more smoothly through the transition and helping to create those offensive opportunities. It goes into finding maybe someone else to ride that wing with Matthew Barzal, so that when he does create those opportunities, someone else is out there to finish the chances that he's setting up for them.
And so we're on the same page that this summer is about patching holes, not buying a new ship, not tearing it down and putting it back together.
No, I just don't think that's in the cards. I don't think that it doesn't make sense to me. The Islanders are a lot better off than I think the season they had is indicative of.
Agree.
I'm not one to give them I'm not one to take them off the hook for having to play 13 games on the road. I get how terrible that was and traumatizing, I'm sure, to have to play 13 games away from their home arena. But, that's a tough ask. Not the toughest thing in the world. Other teams have had to do it. Right. Understandably not as long. But even if that's the case, they came back somewhat middle of the road off the 13-game road trip. The COVID situation is where things started to go downhill.
Yeah.
Pollock
being hurt.
And then Pollock being hurt. And they just weren't able to get themselves back into the shape that they needed to be. Or not the players themselves, but they weren't able to right the ship with everything else that was going on. So, listen, I think everything is there for this team to be successful next season. They need to patch those holes. The ship doesn't need to be completely renovated yet. If we're sitting here, 40-something games into the season next year, and we're still having the same conversation, that's when I think the concern is really where it starts to set in.
I'm with you there, and I think there might be something to what Brock Nelson had to say in his recent quotes too, where maybe a long offseason isn't the worst thing in the world. Now, that doesn't mean it's good that they missed the playoffs, that they shouldn't have made the playoffs or anything like that. Obviously, we would have liked to seen more success this year, getting into the playoffs and going deep again. But to try to find some silver lining in this is going to be the most rest this team has had in a while.
Yeah.
2 deep playoff runs, 3 playoff runs altogether. You got to the second round that first year under Barry Trotz. So maybe they can lick some wounds here, just also mentally kind of just get away from the game a little bit here and really refresh and come back, healthy and clear. And you also have the comparisons made to the Tampa Bay Lightning, how it took them a couple of years and they had a year where they missed the playoffs. Everybody likes to do the comparisons. I mean, not that the roadmap is the same for all franchises and for all teams, but, But you can look at it that way and say, hey, just because they missed the playoffs for one season doesn't mean that's it. You got to blow it all up. I think that I agree with you 100%. I think that the pieces are still there. They get a couple of patches to the ship here, and they can get right back where they were and maybe really just starting off fresh, not only with a normalized schedule, but, again, also with a longer offseason. Maybe they just have better legs next year. And they can kind of fire themselves out of the cannon a lot better than they did at the beginning of this season. So I think we're going to see playoffs next year again for the Islanders as long as Lou makes the right moves. And that's really, look, this is probably his biggest summer since his first summer with the franchise. Obviously relieving Doug Weight and Garth Snow of their duties, bringing in Barry Trotz, and really establishing this new era in Islander history, because it really is. It's a big change under this regime, and I think this is going to be his most important summer since, where he has some very, very clear holes that he has to address, and if he does, they're probably looking good. If he doesn't, then we might be looking at a season that looks very similar to this one.
Yeah, it'll be it's a off season that's going to have a lot of ramifications for the organization going forward, and it's going to kind of set the direction for where the franchise is going to go, not just for next season, but for 3-4 seasons down the line.
Yeah, for sure. So, folks, with this being the final show of the season for the New York Islanders, this is what's going to happen with Hockey Night in New York. We are going to get off our regular weekly shows. We obviously will be covering the draft. We will be covering free agency. We'll do some preview shows for that, some post shows for that. Who knows? You might even find us up in Montreal for the draft. We'll see if that happens, but we're talking about it. We'll see. But we're obviously going to cover those important dates, and we're going to watch these playoffs here. And we might try to do some spotlight shows maybe on some alumni over the course of the summer before we really kick it back into gear for training camp in September. As you guys know, if you've been listening or watching for a while, we always come back in September once training camp comes around. So we're obviously still going to have a presence on social media. We'll be watching. We'll be around. But sad to say, due to the shortened Islander season, that's going to shorten our bit here a little bit. But a huge thanks to all you guys who've been with us all year, watching the twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, embracing the video version of this show, getting involved with the chat. We actually have a lot more exciting stuff coming up heading into next year that we're working on this summer. We're going to be hard at work just to make the show bigger and better. So big thanks to you. And, of course, a huge thanks to all you guys that listen at your leisure, whether it's on your ride to work, whenever the case may be. You guys are still, our massive base here as far as our listenership and our viewership here with the show. So I want to extend a huge thanks to you guys, too. And look, like I said, we're always going to be around. You can drop us a line on social media, drop us an email. Anything we can do to make this show better, to make your experience better, please let us know. But a huge thanks. We really appreciate the support. Has been tremendous. It makes me very happy and proud to do this show, even if it's with Christian Arnold. No, but on a more serious note, it's been an absolute blast, and looking forward to doing a lot more.
Yes, we can't thank you enough for being a part of this and having fun with us each week and putting up with our silliness and our goofiness and just having a laugh. Because that's at the end of the day, it's what we're trying to do. We're having a good time here, talking some Isles hockey and just having some fun.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, folks. Having fun. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap this up here. Going to send out a huge thanks to our pal Andrew Gross from Newsday. I mean, an all-star in himself, a hero of the season himself.
Yes.
With all the fun and time that we've had with him this year. So huge thanks to Andrew Gross. And, of course, a big thanks to our sponsors, RJ Daniels American Bar and Grill, located at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center, the best place to catch the Isles when you can't make it to the game. Don't just go for the Isles. They have live music, comedy nights, trivia, a late-night bar scene. They have it all. Huge thanks to Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Of course, the new location in East Islip. And Belmont at UBS Arena. They're an official partner of the New York Islanders and the greatest deli around. Check out the menu at BlueLineDeli.com for their great selections and hockey-themed heroes. And, of course, a big thanks to Ty Technology, a voice-over IP company providing phone services for businesses across the country. Check them out at TyTechnology.com for all your telecom needs. Or give them a call at 516-856-7800 and get 3 free months of service. Give them a call. And a huge thanks to Oyster Bay Brewing Company, located at 36 Audrey Avenue in Oyster Bay. You can order their great beers and merchandise at oysterbaybrewing.com for curbside pickup, local delivery, or shipping anywhere in New York. And 36 states across the country get 15% off with coupon code HNINY. Again, thank you all so much. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with us this season. Tune in at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. If you enjoy the show, please rate, review, and subscribe at your favorite podcast provider. Tell your friends. Spread the word. Follow Christian on Twitter at C_Arnold01. Follow myself at Shawnee Hockey. Follow the show at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For Christian Arnold, my name is Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night New York. We'll see you soon.